Live every day as if it were the last, because before you know it, time goes past and life's just not that long. Tell all you love that you love them so, because even if you do, they might not know, and one day we'll all be gone. Taste the wind, don't let it blow on by. Sing songs of love, let the music get you high, and when it's said and done, you'll know.
Men, do you have close men friends that you open your heart to about your fears, your failures, your deepest concerns? Men, do you have close men friends who know the worst about you and are still your friends? Sadly, for many men, their friendships with other men are just about doing stuff together. Drinking booze, playing pool, playing poker, playing ball, hunting, fishing. Many women's friendships with other women go much deeper, sharing the precious and the painful inside. Little girls can walk to school hand in hand, hug and cry, and say to each other, "You're my best friend. I need you. I love you." But many little boys are ashamed and afraid to show their feelings for each other. Fag or hoto are words little boys learn to fear like hell. Many teenage boys fear people will think they're gay if they show affection to other boys. Many men let their guard down in public if they're boozing together, or in a bus depot or an airport saying hi or goodbye, if they score a touchdown or make a basket, a pat on the ass or a hug. One of the reasons many men love playing sports, they can touch other men's bodies in public and not be put down for it. Many men, sadly, cannot admit this even to themselves. Men, do you tell your men friends your sadness, your loneliness? Do you express tenderness? Men can be as sensitive, as warm, and as open as women. Men do not have to spend their whole lives bluffing each other. Sadly, many men just shoot the breeze with each other, talking business, sports, women, politics. Many men are allergic to going deep and personal with other men. Many older men become emotional vegetables when their wives die because they depended on those wives to connect deeply with family and friends. Some men are waking up and changing, finding freedom. I'm deeply indebted to many people, primarily in 4 states, New Mexico, Arizona, Illinois, and Virginia. Many people who have taught me, many people who have loved me, many people who have inspired me. Many people have helped me make huge changes in my life. And here are some of those changes. I grew up in a mostly white farm community in Illinois. I now enjoy living in a mostly brown and black neighborhood in New Mexico's largest city, Albuquerque. I grew up in a 10-room, 2-story house, plus attic and cellar. My mother was born upstairs in that house in 1907, 114 years ago. And now I enjoy living in one sunny, rented, small room, 9.5 by 12 feet with 6 windows in the house of a friend. I would hate to live in a dark dungeon. I like lots of natural light, those 6 windows in my room. I don't need 1 inch more than that 9.5 by 12-foot room, so why would I want more? If I were given a luxury mansion, I would not keep it. I would be ashamed as hell to live in it. Millions worldwide have no home, and thousands in Albuquerque have no home. As a kid, I was spoiled with too many toys, too many books, too many clothes, too many photograph records. But now I enjoy living on less than the U.S. poverty level for me as a single person. I receive $454 a month of Social Security retirement, plus EBT and Medicaid. I have never owned a house. The only real estate property I have ever owned in my 76 years is my cemetery plot at the beautiful dirt cemetery, San Jose de Armijo, on the west side of Albuquerque. Why waste water for grass in a cemetery in this desert? It's a dirt cemetery, San Jose de Armijo. The graves there are much cheaper than the large grass cemeteries. I paid $1,790 3 years ago, the summer of 2018, for that cemetery plot. San Jose de Armijo does not require the very expensive vaults or liners for the coffins. The grass cemeteries, Fairview, Sunset, Mount Calvary, require a vault or liner, and their graves cost much more. I built my simple coffin out of 1/2-inch plywood for $60, also in the summer of 2018. Beginning in the year 2000, I have aimed to write down every penny I spend for everything. A wonderful discipline. I learned it from the book Your Money or Your Life by Vicky Dominguez and another author. Because most people in the United States spend much money on crap no one needs. And much of that crap just ends up in the landfill eventually. I have no right to much more than I need, while many millions worldwide suffer on far less than they need. Cold, hungry, sick, homeless. How can we adults teach kids to be fair in our families if we refuse to live fairly in our world family of over 7 billion sisters and brothers? I want no storage units packed with stuff I do not need and I do not use. Living simply with enough healthy food, some clothes for cold weather, a small home, good friends, a garden for food and flowers is freedom. enough, enough, bastante. And of course, the stores and the advertisements, the commercials, constantly bombard people with you gotta have more, buy, buy, buy. And I refuse to be their damn fool. I was a very religious kid. I sang solos and spoke in area churches back in Illinois. I was president of Youth for Christ Club in our public high school. I majored in Bible in a church college in Virginia. I became a sincere, and I want to emphasize that, a sincere young Christian preacher when I was 20 years old. First in Virginia, then in Illinois. I had not yet learned to question deeply my faith and the Bible. I wish we had a fair, loving, powerful parent God who helped all people who pray for help. But millions of people for thousands of years have prayed desperately to God for help the best they knew how and received no help. Sadly, for years I swallowed false advertising for God and I spread false advertising for God. I'm no longer religious. In high school, I hated physical education class. I was often last person chosen for teams. Would any of the athletes from my class of 1964, when we graduated, any of those still living, have believed that now, at 76 years old, I do many exercises almost every morning, free, at home, in my room, 250 push-ups in sets, not all at once, in sets, 30 chin-ups in sets, 250 crunches in sets, and other exercises after I get up around 6 a.m. I'm strongly attracted to certain lean, fit, healthy men, so I work to be lean, fit, and healthy myself. I saw for many years how sugar and junk food and being very fat devastated the body and the life of my all-time closest friend, my mother. Being fat is an awful epidemic because of the unhealthy factory fake foods, high in calories, low in nutrients, and many people assume they will add on pounds as the years pass. Bullshit. I weigh now 15 to 20 pounds less than I did in high school. Back then, I also, along with my mother, was severely addicted to sugar shit. In high school, I did not dance. I believed it was wrong. So I was excused from the physical education class to go to study hall or the library when the other kids had dancing. But now, I love to dance for hours to beautiful music, Chicano music, older country western, older rock at fiestas I love to dance for hours. I don't know all the steps by any means. I just do what I feel. As a child, I wanted my food separated on my plate. Very fussy. But every day since November 10th, 1999, I have drunk some of my piss for health. Many people, thousands and thousands of people in India, Mexico, the Netherlands, Germany, England, and the United States have drunk their piss for health. It's nothing I dreamed up. It's not New Age. It goes back at least 9,000 years in Mexico, 5,000 years in India. As a teenager, I seldom wore shorts in public, other than physical education class. In the early 1970s, I first experienced men and women together, naked, in public, at the Spence Hot Springs in the Jemez Mountains of New Mexico. I loved it. I went there dozens of times in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s with friends. I was often naked as an adult in the presence of my mother and my father. I have photos my mother took of me naked as an adult in the garden or inside a building. In fact, at the Hippie Hollow near Austin, Texas, she took a picture of me outside there naked. It was a clothing optional place, but when we were there in 1978, I guess, late 78, it was in the winter and I didn't see another naked person. I posed naked for hundreds of artists at UNM, colleges in Illinois, and for other art groups in Santa Fe and Albuquerque. I love to be naked if I'm not cold and if I'm not in danger of getting arrested or beaten up. Naked bodies are not obscene, but war and paying tax for war are obscene. As a teenager in Illinois, I wasted many precious hours addicted to violent westerns and other crap on TV. But I've owned no television in Albuquerque since I first moved here 51 years ago this past June. Now, if you have a television or a computer or a smartphone, I thank you for watching my program. But if you decide to get rid of them to live more simply, I compliment you. I have paid no federal income tax, not one damn bloody penny, for war for 43 years. Almost half of every federal income tax dollar goes for war. Past wars, because of the debt of the past wars, present wars, and the almost unimaginable amount of war materials for future wars. As I grew up, I did not know I am gay. I did not know there were gay people in the whole world. I never had sex with any male until I was 31. Never as a boy with boys, never with any male until I was 31. I had sex with a few women before that. And since that first time with a man 45 years ago, this month, I guess it was, 1976, December, I've had sex with many, many, many men. I wish I had kept a complete list. I've been in love with some of those men. Jose, Don, Daniel. As far as I know, I am the most well-known openly gay man in Albuquerque. I have no shame, no guilt about fucking, sucking, ass-licking, cuddling, naked and sober, with a healthy man who is attracted to me and to whom I am attracted. No shame, no guilt whatsoever. My gay Chicano friend Steve in Albuquerque taught me many years ago the pleasure of licking ass. My gay black friend Jesse in New York State told me he had sex with some men married to women if, now get this, the men's wives knew and accepted. None of this lying and behind the back and covering up and deceiving. No. If the men's wives knew and accepted. I would be ashamed as hell to be a boxer injuring men. I would be ashamed as hell to be a soldier murdering men, women, and kids. I do not want any married man lying to his wife and getting in fights with her about his sex with me, if she does not know and accept his sex with me. In 1966, my parents bought me a used 1961 Dodge car, and that was the only car I have ever owned in my life. I sold to the junkyard here in 1979, almost 13 years later. I've owned no car for 42 years, and I wouldn't keep one if you gave me one free, the most luxury car in the city. I would quickly sell it and use the money for much better things. I've ridden in nobody's car for 20 years. I ride city buses, but I mostly walk. Much better for my health, much better for Mother Earth, and a hell of a lot cheaper. I've not traveled outside New Mexico for over 27 years since I returned from my dad's funeral in Illinois in 1994. Many years ago in Illinois, I worked part-time in my parents' cattle and hog business. And sadly, I participated in much cruelty. To those animals. I've eaten no meat, no dairy for well over 20 years. Watch the video Cowspiracy on DVD or on Netflix, Cowspiracy, one word, to see how raising animals for people to eat meat and dairy is one of the biggest causes of the catastrophic climate crisis. I do not want to get married to any man, and like many people who are straight or gay or bisexual, I can be deeply in love, openly in love with more than one person at the same time. And I ask every couple, man and woman, two men, two women, every couple getting legally married, do I ever ask yourself this question, each of you? Do I ever know myself or the other person or the future well enough to know for sure, we both, not just me, not just the other person, we both will do well with only each other romantically until death. I don't want to make foolish promises. I don't want to promise what I may later regret. I flirt only with men I'm attracted to, men I think will not get mean and crazy, even if their answer is no to sex and romance with me. I aim not to be a pest. I aim not to be a pest to any friend or lover. I aim to expect from, I aim not to expect from any friend or lover what that person cannot give me or will not give me in the relationship. I was severely addicted to sweets, ice cream, cake, pie, cookies, candy, as a kid and in my 20s. And one big reason almost all of my teeth, except for one, went bad and fell out. I had surgery on the retinas of both my eyes in 1974 when I was 28. 10 weak spots and or holes in the one retina, 13 in the other, caused by my damn addiction to sweets and other junk food. I was terrified of going blind, but I changed. I saw what the sugar shit and other junk did to my mother, how she suffered hell for 25 years. For many years, I've eaten nothing containing added sugar, no artificial sweeteners, and make sure to avoid all processed vegetable oils. They can be as bad as sugar for your health. No junk food. Sugar causes or worsens 60 diseases. I stopped cooking my food December 12, 1998. Cooking destroys most nutrients. Not all, but most. I eat raw plant foods. My main food every day are my 2 or 3 quart jars of blended smoothies containing lentils, flaxseed, purified water, fenugreek seed, ginkgo leaves, hawthorn berry powder, pau d'arco powder, garlic, hot red chili pepper, turmeric, black pepper, apple, puncture vine powder, green tea leaves, calitas, dried now that it's winter. But in the summertime, I often eat raw alfalfa in my smoothies. And now in this cooler weather, I add ginger root. Ginger is amazing. It's known as the universal remedy. But in the hot weather, I usually don't eat it because it is very warming. and I don't want to be hotter than I already am then. I drink no booze. I take no prescription drugs. I use no illegal street drugs. I smoke no cigarettes. Booze and cigarettes lower the sex hormone testosterone. The booze and cigarettes companies will not tell you that, of course. Like it or not, sooner or later, we all will die. But I eat, I exercise, I walk, I sunbathe, I sleep to stay healthy until that day comes, if possible. Besides my smoothies, I also eat many carrots, blended, can't chew them, and much fruit. Apples, avocados, bananas, grapes, melons, mulberries, plums, figs, peaches, mangoes, pomegranates, persimmons, but no fruit juice, absolutely not. We need the fiber of the whole fresh fruit. And so many of the bottled or canned fruit juices not only don't have the fiber, but they have been heated to high temperatures, which destroys many of the nutrients. Why suffer? I've gone to no medical doctor for years. I'm not sure if I've ever had a complete physical. My Chicano friend Rudy used to sell fruits and vegetables at the flea market. I spoke with him many times. In his late 80s, he moved his body to load and unload the fruits and vegetables better than many people in their 20s. He was in his late 80s. In my 30s, I stayed up late many nights and felt like shit the next day. And now I go to bed most nights, 9 to 10 p.m., get up around 6 a.m. Early to bed, early to rise helps us to be healthy and wise. Forget the wealthy part. I'm not interested in that. I love to live simply, but to be healthy and wise. And many years ago, I foolishly drove cars and drove trucks in my parents' business when I was very sleepy. I could have injured myself and other people. I could have killed other people and myself. Very foolish. Never drive sleepy. In a way, it's more dangerous than driving drunk. And one of the many changes I would want to make in my life, if I had my life to live over, never drive sleepy. We all age unless we die first. But by living healthy every day, we can slow the aging to stay active in body and sharp in our minds. Some people are in better shape at 80 than others at 50 or even 40. What good is owning houses and cars and businesses and much money if our body is sick and miserable? A healthy body is worth far more than all the luxury stuff of any millionaire or billionaire or any shopping mall. Some people die before they get old. Some people live to be old but spend many years suffering. Some people grow old but stay healthy and enjoy life almost until the day they die. I hope I'm one of them. with much help from many, many, many people, I've made huge changes in my life. I'm deeply indebted to many people who have taught me, people who have loved me, people who have inspired me. I constantly collect wisdom on how to live and how not to live in order to live that wisdom and to pass it on. As you may have heard me say before on this program, I do not buy expensive jewelry. And I want to point out this bracelet my mother bought for my dad back in the, I guess it was in the 1970s here in New Mexico. And my mother and my dad are both long dead. This watch I bought for $5 at the flea market, used, some weeks ago. This was my mother's turquoise bracelet that she bought here in New Mexico. This bracelet, my dear friend Roberto, who died of AIDS at 31 in 1999, he gave it to me. And Joe from Duranis gave me this ring that I put on the bracelet. Martina Tafoya from Martineztown gave me this ring, and I had a piece of real turquoise put into it. These armbands came from New Glarus, Wisconsin. I mean, a piece of fabric which I made into armbands. New Glarus is a small Swiss town, a very interesting place in southern Wisconsin. My mother had a bit of Swiss ancestry, and we would go up there in the summertime to hear the beautiful Swiss music festival. This is Edelweiss, if you know the song Edelweiss and the Sound of Music, a Swiss flower. My mother wore this many times. These metal feathers were from my friend Bernice, who died this year in Albuquerque. This was from Robert Mirabal, the renowned flute player of Taos Pueblo, known by thousands of people for his excellent music. I heard him sing in Old Town some years ago, and I went up to him afterwards and I told him how I enjoy living simply. And he makes these, that they look like the beak of a bird, but it's made from wood and then a bit of turquoise on it. He makes these. He had one on, and he took it off, and he gave it to me. This gold-looking chain I bought for $2 recently at the flea market. The brown and white necklace, my very close friend Johnny gave to me. The red necklaces, I guess I got at a yard sale. What am I forgetting here? The turquoise necklace, Johnny gave to me. And I guess that covers most of it. And these earrings, I think one of them I got at Santo Domingo, Pueblo, a couple of years ago at the feast day. Johnny and I enjoyed going to that feast day so much. 2 different years, but the last 2 years it has been canceled to the public because of the pandemic. And I guess one of the feathers also came from my friend Bernice. I love this testimony from a woman in California. She says, my father worked 6 days a week. My mother was always cleaning, cooking, doing laundry. They both came from families with parents who never showed any affection, never told them they were loved. So, of course, this explains why they did not know how to give affection or express it in words. And this woman from California says, my life changed at age 9 when I stayed overnight at a girlfriend's house. Her mother kissed us both, good night, and tucked us in. And that did it. I was so moved by that loving gesture, I could not sleep. I thought, this is the way it's supposed to be. And when I left, I was angry at my own parents for a while. But I could not hold it against Mom and Dad for the way they were. But this is what I did, she says, to reverse the process. I began kissing my mother so often that I got her to laugh about it. I married at 17. I had 2 children before I was 20, she says. I kissed them until their little cheeks were red. And when I talked to my mother on the telephone, I would say, I love you, Mom. And after a while, she finally said, I love you too. I'd never heard her say that before. And after a few weeks, when I'd go to see Mom, she would say, where's my kiss? When it was time for me to leave, she'd say, I love you. You know that, don't you? I'm so glad, she says. I was able to change things because my precious mother passed away not long ago. I cherish the many letters from her saying, I love you. In South Africa, after many years of bloody, cruel white supremacy against blacks, many meetings took place across the whole nation for speaking the truth about the white people's torture and murders of black people. It was the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, bringing out what really happened in order to bring whites and blacks together as equals, as neighbors, and not pretending that the evil hadn't happened, not sweeping it under the rug. If white police confessed honestly the evils they had committed against blacks, they could avoid prosecution. They could avoid prison. One elderly South African black woman who had suffered terrible losses at the hands of a brutal white murderer under the racist white supremacy. And here is a true account of how she forgave the killer of her son and her husband. In this Truth and Reconciliation Commission meeting there in South Africa, this elderly black woman stood in the emotionally charged courtroom listening to a group of white police officers confess the atrocities they had perpetrated in the name of apartheid. Officer Van de Broek confessed his personal responsibility in the death of this woman's son. And along with others, Van de Broek had shot her 18-year-old son at point-blank range. The group partied while they burned his body, turning it over and over on the fire until it was completely reduced to ashes. 8 years later, Van de Broek, this white, extremely racist, violent cop, and others arrived to take her husband, this woman's husband. And a few years later, shortly after midnight, Van de Broek again appeared, and he took the woman to a place beside a river. And on a wood pile, her husband lay bound. And they forced this black woman to watch as they poured gasoline over her husband's body and ignited the flames that consumed his body. And the last words that she heard him say was, "Forgive them." And now Van de Broek stood before her, awaiting judgment. Vengeance seemed inevitable. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission officers asked her what she wanted. And she said, "I want 3 things. I want Mr. Van de Broek to take me to the place where they burned my husband's body. I would like to gather up the dust and give him a decent burial. And second," she said, "Mr. Van de Broek took all my family away from me, and I still have a lot of love to give. Twice a month, I would like for him, the killer of her husband and her 18-year-old son, I would like for him to come to the ghetto and spend a day with me so I can be a mother to him. And third, I would like Mr. Van de Broek to know that he is forgiven by God and that I forgive him too. And I would like someone to come and lead me by the hand to where Mr. Van de Broek is so that I can hug him and he can know my forgiveness is real." And as they led this elderly black woman across the silent courtroom, Van de Broek fainted. He was overwhelmed with such love, such forgiveness for his atrocities. And in the courtroom, someone began singing Amazing Grace. And gradually others joined in until finally everyone there was singing Amazing Grace. As I said earlier on this program, I do not believe in God any longer, but I know with much help from each other, We can wake up. We can change from our evil ways. We can forgive atrocities. John Newton wrote the words of Amazing Grace. John Newton was a brutal white slave trader, guilty of the kidnapping, torture, murder of many black people from Africa. But John Newton changed, and he worked to abolish slavery of black people. He wrote Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. I was blind, but now I see. The young Roman Catholic Chicana nun, Sister Diana Ortiz, went to Guatemala in Central America to serve people there. She grew up in Grants, New Mexico. She lived in a Guatemalan village. She enjoyed working with those children. On November 2nd, 1989, the Guatemalan government kidnapped her and brutally tortured Sister Diana Ortiz, this Chicana Roman Catholic nun. Dozens of cigarette burns on her back. The torturers gang raped her. They threw her in a pit of dead and dying people. And one of the men who tortured her took Diana's arm, put a machete in her hand, and forced her to stab a Guatemalan woman who was also being tortured. And after Sister Diana was released, she found out she was pregnant from the gang rape. She had an abortion. And for years, as a Roman Catholic nun, she felt awful guilt, terrible shame about having an abortion. She suffered for years terrifying flashbacks of her horrific torture. She testified to Guatemalan authorities and to U.S. authorities about what she had gone through. She demanded the U.S. to make public how the U.S. government strongly supported the torture and murder of hundreds of thousands of Guatemalan people. Students, trade union leaders, priests, nuns, people who had the conscience and the courage to stand up against the filthy rich big shots of Guatemala who ran Guatemala and kept most people suffering in poverty. The U.S. government overthrew Guatemala's democratically elected president in 1954, many, many years before the hundreds of thousands of Guatemalan people were murdered by the government backed by the U.S. In many nations, the U.S. government sides with the filthy rich to keep the many poor people down, so U.S. corporations can rob the resources, the cheap labor of the working people in those countries. But as Sister Diana Ortiz tells us in her heart-wrenching book, most U.S. government officials lie constantly and do their damnedest to keep people here in this country ignorant about what the U.S. really does in many nations all over the world, the atrocities the tortures, the murders. Murder of hundreds of thousands of our sisters and brothers. U.S. federal income tax dollars paid for the weapons, and the U.S. trained the Guatemalan soldiers to torture and murder their own people. Read Sister Diana Ortiz's book entitled The Blindfolds Eyes, My Journey from Torture to Truth. Available free through interlibrary loan if you go to the local public library and request it. Free. Sister Diana Ortiz, her book, The Blindfolds Eyes, My Journey from Torture to Truth. Would a loving human parent slam and lock the door forever against a son or daughter, regardless what evil they have done? Would a loving parent God sentence billions of people to, or even one person, to never-ending torture with no pardon, no parole? Never ending. No pardon, no parole. To all who believe in God, do you believe in hell? I would never want to spend eternity with such a cruel monster God. I've never met anyone who I could say for sure, no matter how much better parenting, brain chemistry, nutrition, no matter how much love, time, and truth, that person would forever refuse to wake up and choose good instead of evil. Would a loving, all-powerful parent God refuse to help millions of people in war zones who pray desperately to keep them and their families safe, but were massacred despite all their anguished prayers? Massacred often by soldiers who claim to be religious, even Christian. Soldiers on both sides, praying to God for help as they kill each other. Soldiers on both sides believing their noble patriotic duty approved by God was to go murder their enemies. I was a sincere Christian preacher in the 1960s. I had not yet learned to question the Bible deeply. I thank many people who helped me open my eyes. Good night.
Live every day as if it were the last, because before you know it, time goes past and life's just not that long. Tell all you love that you love them so, because even if you do, they might not know, and one day we'll all be gone. Taste the wind, don't let it blow on by. Sing songs of love, let the music get you high. And when it's said and done, you'll know the sun will shine on. And when it's said and done, you'll know the sun will shine on.